The next time I try to do something like read 63 books in 1 month, will someone remind me of these feelings I have now that I'm about to go into. And I know what you're thinking, but did I read the whole 63 books? Yes, I did. Dark Bleatings, everyone. Today I'm very excited because I did it. I completed it. I completed my reading challenge. My ridiculous reading challenge of trying to read 63 books in 1 month. I just never thought I'd be able to do this. I really thought that this final video was going to be me sadly telling you that I'd only made it to a mere 40 books. Cheers! We're celebrating. Anyway, this is how this video is going to go. I'm going to briefly summarise all of the books that I read. There are 27 of them, so I'm gonna try not to go over a minute per book, but I will be writing more detailed reviews of all of these books. Every single one of these will get a review on my website. Without further ado, I'm going to recap all of these books, let you know which ones I absolutely loved, and then at the end I think I might just do a little reflection on how I feel, because I haven't slept more than 2.5 or 3 hours a night for at least 10 days, and I think it's made me go a bit funny, you know. Also, I never drink alcohol. So anyway, let's get into the books. First up, a novel by Mark Hobson called Dweller Under the Roots. This is about Jacko, Chris and Lee who rob a post office, but it goes awry, things get violent, and somebody gets like quite badly injured, like in the sense that the injury makes them dead, and then we're following Lee when he goes to like hide up. I did enjoy it. It wasn't quite folky feeling enough for me. So there are elements of crime fiction here, and typically speaking I really don't enjoy crime fiction at all, so maybe that's what like tipped the balance of the tone for me, if you will, because I usually prefer just like being really nestled in like pagan deities and like weird ritualistic practices of a whole community. I would definitely read more from Mark Hobson, and if you're somebody who likes like a crime horror blend, this might be a book you'd enjoy. Night in Our Veins by Paul Edwards, which is a collection. These stories were really weird. Couple of sips of wine and look what's happening. So we have Where the Wounded Trees Wait, which is about a woman called Carol that's got a really interesting paranormal ability in that she's able to sort of transfer her consciousness into like past events and speak to people who died during the events or whatever, and I really liked that idea. And it I don't want to like spoil anything, can't really say much more because it's a short story, but it had like a very nice wholesome vibe to go with the weirdness of it. The title story, Night in Our Veins, for obvious reasons that won't be obvious to you if you haven't read it, I loved this story, and I'm not going to say that there's a Baphomet statue, but if that statue isn't Baphomet, I will eat my own face. But there was a story called Highway, which is about fissures kind of opening up in reality, and people are like flocking to them and going inside. And then we've got a couple that don't really want to be together anymore, like nothing awful has happened, but it's just one of those where like they'd rather not be together, but nothing has like happened to incite them breaking up, so they're just existing together while everyone else is disappearing. And I just thought that like that was such an interesting idea if you're sort of reflecting on relationships and stuff, and I just really liked it. So quite horror light in some of the stories, but then like more balls out horror in others, so it depends on what you like. If you like a mixture of everything, then you might like this collection. The Curse of House Corbant was next, by Patrick Luther, which was a novel, and there's a sequel which I will touch on a bit later. Ali Corbant has a very unfortunate and well-known locally family history of violence and debauchery, and everyone thinks her house is haunted, and in particular one of her worst sort of now dead relatives was a doctor that was hideously abusive to his patients in his asylum. Now, there isn't really anything wrong with this story, but for personal preference it wasn't one of my favourites, and that is really not the author's fault. It's because I absolutely hate asylum stories. So that's really not the author's fault that this book just happened to use a setting like my least favourite setting of all horror fiction, so I was just instantly turned off by that. But the story itself is fine. I think that people who enjoy ghost stories, anything to do with possession, and especially if you're someone who, unlike me, really likes asylum stories, this would probably be like a novel you would quite enjoy. Next up an LGBTQ novel by Hugh Westenra called The Erstwhile Tyler Kyle, and this was so funny. It's so tongue-in-cheek humour. It's about this guy called Tyler that used to be an actor, and I think he's only about 30 odd now, but now he's like a cryptid investigator, and he runs this really popular YouTube investigation channel with his best friend Josh, and they go to an island, it's an island. They go to an island to investigate this like old cryptid myth, and it's just, the tone is just so funny. Like, I really love the characters. Tyler, like, being in Tyler's head was an absolute treat, because like, what a great character. So anyway, listen up. Next up, we've got Six Stooges and Counting by Ramsey Campbell, which is a non-fiction book, and I'm cheating a little bit because, and this isn't a horror book, obviously it's about the Three Stooges, but it is written by Ramsey Campbell. So this is lovely. It's about the conception and the performances and the cinema history of the Three Stooges and how they were put together and like the performers involved and everything, and also their influence on popular culture and how they were received and perceived, and then like a little reflective look. And I mean, I'm not someone who's like super into the Three Stooges. I knew hardly anything about them. They were a bit before my time, so obviously I wasn't around for like the wave and the boost. So I wasn't here when they were popular, but now I feel like I got to see them through this book, and I think it takes a really special writer who's really enthusiastic about their subject to engage a reader that knows nothing about their topic from start to end of a book, like a non-fiction piece. So I really enjoyed it, and I'd especially recommend it to people who are fans of the Three Stooges. It would be a really, really great reference and study guide for people who are doing any sort of academic work, like essays or anything on it. I would rate it quite highly for that. And then, yeah, if you just generally enjoy Ramsey's writing, you might also love it like I did. Next, A Diabolical Plot, which is by Benjamin Langley. The wine's getting me, isn't it? By Benjamin Langley, and it's the third in the Guy Fawkes Demon Hunter series, which is a historical horror fiction that provides an alternate life story of Guy Fawkes. So in this reality, Guy Fawkes isn't just some guy that tried to blow up Parliament and failed and then, you know, got charged and executed over it. Guy Fawkes is a guy that can recognize demons, and he goes around with a band of, you know, friends killing demons from book to book, and he's trying to expose the demonic influences in Parliament, which I thought was a really funny parallel to what's going on in UK politics right now. Guy Fawkes is a great character to follow. These sort of demon fighting adventures are just like, they range in severity, violence and bloodshed, and it's just, yeah, it's all around just a great time, but also a tale of friendship and sacrifice and family. Next up, a novel from David Youngquist, and I've never read anything by that fella before, called Fluffy Fucking Bunnies. And the premise of this is absolutely batshit. So alien ships turn up and they just hover in Earth's atmosphere for 4 years without making any contact. They're just there in the sky, and humanity just basically tears itself apart in a panic. And when the aliens finally do make contact, they basically tell the world that we have wrecked this planet, that's not why we were put here, and half of us have to go for the sake of like preserving this planet and bringing everything back to life and rectifying all of our ills, and on a volunteer basis half of the world's population go to live on other planets, and then the people who are left on Earth, certain parts of their DNA is activated, so they start growing and changing, transforming and taking on animal traits, and our main character is a bunny. And not only that, but dominant genes kick up as well, so a lot of men become women, biologically speaking, and it sounds crazy, and then obviously how humanity deals with that is like the rest of the story, because people are, you know, transforming at different rates, and people have got different reactions to transforming. Our main character is a trans woman that was secretly trans for their entire life, so this is a very welcome DNA shift for them, because they get to actually have the body they feel like they should have and everything. So that was like, it was lovely. It was a really lovely read. Obviously this is a queer friendly book. Also, there's a lot of metaphor, allegory and everything in there. There's a lot of social commentary in this book, but just on the backdrop of this crazy premise. It was funny, it was quite wholesome, it was thought-provoking, and I really liked it. Next up, anthologies from Dark Peninsula Press, Negative Space, and Negative Space 2. So my 3 favourites in Negative Space, the first one. These are like splatterpunk anthologies, by the way. I'm pretty sure. I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure, because all of the stories were quite splatterpunkery. So there was Luminescence by Scotty Milder, or Milder, I'm so sorry. The whole hunks, but that just doesn't sound right. The whole hunks, the whale hunts by P.C. Macmillan. You might be able to tell, but I was making my notes due to the lack of sleep. My handwriting looks like a doctor's scrawl. It's awful. So yeah, sorry, The Whale Hunts by P.C. or P.L. Macmillan, and The Artist and the Muse by the late great J. Wilburn. So the first 2 are actually sort of like maritime horrors. There's something in the water for both of those, something that wasn't there before, something that might be there, kicked up by climate change, so that was great. And then The Artist and the Muse was my favourite one, and it was absolutely hideous. It's about a woman is fleeing an artist, and if you're wondering what kind of artist, picture human intestines decorating things. Like it was absolutely grotesque, really chilling, scary, like just basically total nightmare fuel. And then in Negative Space 2, my 3 favourites were Derelictus by Stephen Kozaniski, which is in the universe of the hematophages. But there was one called Meat, by Kristen Kirby, and that one was horrible. It was apocalyptic, or post-apocalyptic, and overweight people are referred to as meat by this group, for use your imagination for why. Apparently it's a revered position, not one I wouldn't like to be called a meat, I gotta say. I wouldn't be fancying my chances for survival, but yeah, that was savage. And then my favourite one was called The Places Where Sunflowers Grow by J.W. Schnarr. I loved it. This was apocalyptic, and it was about these like horrible flying creatures. That it was a bit like Tim Lebbon's The Silence, but the creatures were massive. They're these like huge, like dog, bat, human looking things that they just go around killing everybody basically, and yeah, you're safer in the day, so they're kind of like vampiric, but they can't actually like pierce skin, so they have to open people up to get to the fluids inside, and they do that very often by dropping things on them, or they carry them up into the air and then just drop them from a great height so they splat. I would actually really love an entire novel of that story. I really loved it, and I was so sad to get to the end of it, because I really dig like that kind of horror, I guess. Number 10, a collection by Lee Rozelle called Backwaters. This is so weird, this collection. Like, I mean, like, that's always a compliment from me. So really, really, really weird ideas, like really out of the box thinking of like what can be done in a short story and the kind of stories that can be told just in general. So 3 of my favourites were Lila and the Spaceman, which is about a barber and a really weird client and something to do with fish. And then Lord of the Fishes was another story I really liked, which is about an unconventional yoga instructor, and Brother Chester takes her class and is forced to examine and reflect on some of his behaviour with some dire consequences. And then my favourite was called Transplant, and it's about this frat bro, you know exactly what I mean, like a frat bro whose frat does really unsavoury things to, the women on campus, and, they always get away with it and things, and then he heavily sexually pursues his girlfriend's flatmate and gets his way, but she leaves him with a little something. So I really enjoyed that story, just as a sort of twisted, like, F you to that kind of frat bro. Next up, another collection, The Temple of Battered Bones by Jackson Arthur. I thought that there was a lot of raw talent in this collection, and I did enjoy the stories in it. So there's one called The Skeleton Boy, which is about like a guy is in school and he sees this kid in a skeleton mask, follows him, and realizes something really weird, and that was just like a real weird little story that I enjoyed. And then there was Into the Dark Water, which is about a guy reliving a horrible traumatic event, and I can't say any more about it than that, but that was very haunting. And then Making Up His Heart to Do, that was a great story. That was my favourite. This is about a guy and his girlfriend Caitlin, and she's very cold towards him, and I can't say anything about it without like a massive spoiler, but initially I was actually rolling my eyes at this story because I thought that it was like a badly written explanation, like a badly written hint of what's actually happening, but it's not that at all. It's very intentional. Oh, Caitlin. So yeah, that was absolutely disgusting, and really enjoyed it. So Season of the Spirit, which is a Christmas short story collection by Lex Jones. My favourites in this were Partridge in a Pear Tree, which I've read in his other his other collection called Whistling Past the Graveyard, which I quite highly rate that one, by the way. Red Frost is about Ronald and Larry. They served together in the military and they're like best friends, but that won't stop Ronald from being an absolute asshole to Larry, and in the worst possible way. He's a poor Larry. Then maybe he gets his revenge. And then The Lights Aren't As Good As They Used to Be. Now this one was very shocking to me because I read a bit of Lex's writing now, and I am not used to this level of bloody violent gore. I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I think that Lex is a talented writer and I enjoy his like sort of like quiet ghosty stories. That's why I like his writing. So imagine my shock to know that he got, you know, another feather in his cap for types of horror that he writes. Like, that was quite horrific, that one. Yeah, way bloodier than I'm used to for Lex, so that was good. And then another collection, Hunting by the River by Daniel Carpenter. I've never read any Daniel Carpenter before, so my three favourites in that were very varied as well. Got Hunting by the River, the title story. Lee's sister is missing, and apparently she doesn't want to be found, and he knows this because she's quite literally speaking to him through other people. So like, he'll be sat in a coffee shop and a stranger will just start talking, but it's his sister, and I don't know how she's doing this. I'm pretty sure she's not dead, but there is some occult shenanigans. So I was really interested, and I'd actually would love to see an expansion of that story because I was quite like enthralled with that. There was one called Habitual that made me sad and made me a little bit teary, which is about the loneliness of London. If you're someone that lives in London and you're not, you know, a fan of sort of like the impersonal kind of city life that's typical of a place like that. And this deals with sort of like addictive personality and alcoholism as well, so it just made me real sad. And then there was one called Stabbed in the Neck by Dot Cotton, and I knew I was going to love it from the title alone, but this is great. This one is about an apartment block, and we're seeing things from the perspective of the apartment block, and it's going from like flat to flat, just observing the tenants and the people inside, just deciding which people to kill, and it's done it before. So that was funny and I really enjoyed it. And oh gosh, another collection. We'll get to the rest of the novels shortly. Ain't No Witch by John Linwood Grant. This is a short story collection, but also can be just read as like one story. So they're all about Mama Lucy, and I guess I do have favourite stories in this, but I would just read this like from front to back and just take it like as it is, as like a big Mama Lucy story. Mama Lucy is magical and fearless, and like very fearless in that she is not even afraid of something that would drive most people nuts, and she really reminded me of Mother Abigail from The Stand. So I really liked that. That also gave me like a bit of a nostalgic love for when I like first read The Stand. My husband just came in here because he kindly made me a cup of tea, and he didn't see me before I started filming this video, so my appearance was quite a shock to him. God knows what he thinks I'm doing. He's used to seeing me in my pajamas with no makeup on. So anyway, Odd Devils by Zwahk. I'm so sorry, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. Zwahk, it's spelled Z-W-A-H-K. Muchoney is a collection. I felt so bad, but this one really wasn't for me. It was about angels and devils, and I really enjoy that as a concept normally. And he did, and the author did do some like interesting things, like some interesting plays on like what angels and devils are, what their relationship to each other are in these stories, and they came up with some like cool little stories, but just for me it just didn't hit. I couldn't really tell you why. Like I think maybe it's just like writing style preference perhaps. Next, we're on a novel, and it's by Gavin Dillinger, and it's called An Exploration of An Exploration of Existential Indifference in a Void of Confidence, or Good Boy. So this is so funny, and I think that people who enjoyed David Wong, like John Dies at the End, I think if that's your cup of tea, this will be right up your street. Gavin Dillinger is really funny, and this novel is really funny. It's about a guy that buys a house without going to view it first. This guy moves into the house, and it's so he's like walking around just talking about like the minor work that needs to be done. Oh, paint needs to be touched up there. Oh, that flooring isn't great. Oh, there's a portal to hell in my bedroom. Like that kind of tone, and like literally there's a portal to hell in his bedroom, and he just pushes his bed over it until he can figure out how to fix it so that guests don't see it if they come over. And night after night when he moves into this house, he's like just shooing things and poking things back into the hole if they crawl out. So like he's just dealing with demons all the time and hellish hellspawn. And then like a dog type creature comes out. Can I pet that dog? And he likes the dog, so he keeps that. And then a representative of hell, a dog catcher, comes looking for the dog, and he just lies and says he doesn't have it. And then his high school girlfriend had parents who were into the occult, so he tracks her down, like trying to get some information about this hell portal. And yeah, it's just like a whole thing. And it was it was so funny. Like it's just the tone, Gavin's personality like really comes through in the prose. Like there's just so many like little silly details that just made me laugh out loud from page to page. Like the guy's phone breaks, so he takes it to a phone repair shop that's called Why You Break. I'm a huge fan, and I will be doing my darndest to try and promote this because it deserves more readers, and like Gavin deserves a bigger audience. It was just so funny. Next, a novella, the only novella I think I read in this whole last section, Missing in Miskatonic by J.P. Behrens, I'm so sorry, I've probably butchered your surname, J.P. This is a detective mystery on a horror backdrop. A young woman goes missing, and a PI is hired to track her down, and it starts off as a really kind of like normal real world mystery, and escalates into just absolute insanity, like occulty stuff. You know, if you like tentacles, you might like this one. Dead Spot by Angela Sylvaine is a collection also. Angela Sylvaine, you might remember, is the author of Frostbite, the infamous evil prairie dog story, which I obsessively ranted about last time. I have a few favourite stories, again, all completely different types of horror. She's got some with a little humour flair, and then some straight up horror, which I really enjoyed. We've got Astronaut Dreams, which is about Ellie and some 28 Days Later rage style bees. Nightmare, which is about an inherited condition, affliction that's like lovely, handed down the women in this one family, like down the generations, and that was scary. And then Edge of Decay, it's a nice little revenge story. So I really enjoyed that. Not as much as Frostbite, but will I ever enjoy anything again as much as I loved those crazy prairie dogs? I don't know. Next up, The Girl's Insidious Shadow by Patrick Luther is a novel, and it's the sequel to The Curse of House Corbant. So The Curse of House Corbant was the one I mentioned near the start of this video about the one I didn't like because of the asylum stuff. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. I feel really, really, really bad about this because The Curse of House Corbant, I do think has like a good reader base out there. Like there are plenty of people that would love that story. Like it's not my cup of tea, but just take that with a pinch of salt, because that's neither here nor there really. But The Girl's Insidious Shadow, I do have issues with, and I feel so awful because I think, like, I'm pretty sure, I could tell as I was reading it that this was well intentioned, but I think that the execution of the story was like a total misfire. And I'm gonna have to explain a little bit, because I don't want to just criticize like a book and not say why. And I did think about like not reviewing this at all in any way, shape or form, but then I wouldn't be a very genuine book reviewer. So oh gosh. Okay, so this is about Cassie from the first story. So she's 3 in The Curse of House Corbant, and then this is like 13 years later, so she's 16 in this story now. So she's a young woman, and she's, you know, been going through puberty, and she's noticing that boys and men are starting to look at her and treat her differently and talk to her differently. And then it's like a barrage of like sexual harassment and assault, and I feel like what the author was like aiming for here was a female perspective story that's sympathetic to our female protagonist, and I feel like it came from a place of like allyship with women and young girls. But where I feel like it misfired is, you know, this author is not a teenage girl, and you can tell in the sense that she's described physically like in a way that I had to double check how old she was, because she's described like the way you describe an attractive older woman, like a you know, a legal age woman. So, you know, like hourglass figure, things like that you wouldn't normally attribute to a teenage girl if you're not trying to sexualize them. And also the now the amount of harassment I don't necessarily think was actually unrealistic, because unfortunately, like, I got yelled at by builders when I was in my school uniform when I was 12. Like, I mean, that's that side of this story, what, like, unfortunately does tell the experience of teenage girls. It's just that the way that some of this was handled from her perspective didn't read as very authentic to me. And also, there's one decent male character in this book that she fucks over, knowing he's decent. So I was a bit confused about what the messaging actually was for this book, because it felt like it was trying to be a female empowerment story, but it came off a little bit as a nice guys finish last story. Does that make sense? Again, I don't think that was the author's intention. I think that they were going for a female-led power story about dealing with all of this shit, and they were and I think he was trying to layer the characters, especially the male character. But yeah, I feel so uncomfortable criticizing a book. The Curse of House Corbant, totally different kettle of fish. This, I felt a bit uncomfortable reading. I'm so sorry, Patrick, if you see this. The Barricade, a novel by Stephanie Ellis. This is brand new. It's not out until August, so I think the pre-order link will be going up for that probably in like the next month or so, I would assume. So yeah, this is a post-apocalyptic story about a group of surviving humans who went underground, and then everyone else was like left behind up top, you know, planet side. And you know, like the elite and the rich and the like best of society all ended up going underground in this like bunker, this like end of world bunker. So we're talking like obviously politicians, the rich, and we're also talking doctors and scientists and leading experts and engineers and all sorts of stuff. So like they very much just abandon like the working classes and everyone up top. And right at the beginning of the book, we realise that the setup is that this barricade is in place, but instead of it being more to like keep people out of this underground thing, the people that are up top actually survived and they weren't expected to, so they've just still been living up there for 20 years, like trying to put things back together, and they won't allow the people to leave the bunker. They're like, no, you made your choice, you all left us, you wanted to be in the bunker, you're not allowed planet side ever again. So it was really good. It seems quite black and white morally in the beginning about like whose side you're supposed to be on, but then as the further you go in, it's like a very humanistic approach to like all of these different perspectives and actions and things. So it's just, yes, very layered, and it's, I guess it's a human survival and a human like understanding story. And I guess my basic takeaway from that novel was we should be like listening to each other more. I'm going to butcher this name, I am so sorry. I might not try to say it, but there'll be a picture of the cover now. It was called A Battle Against Demons. And yeah, I can't pronounce that name. If someone knows how to sort of phonetically pronounce that, please like spell it out for me in the comments so I know. This is crazy, and it uses concepts that are quite literally foreign to me. I think that the author is from one of the Nordic countries. It's really mystical, really trippy. I got a little bit lost in the beginning, but I was really tired after having no sleep, and this was probably my 4th book of the day. But I did find my way back. It's really well written. It uses figures as like such as death in like quite a like literal sense that they're there. So yeah, this was like horror, mythology, fantasy. It made me want to delve into Nordic mythology a little bit more and see like what the author has pulled from and then what they've completely made up themselves. And yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I would definitely read more by the author. Next, a novel called Starblood by Camilla Fawkes. I'm sorry, Camilla. Steve tries to summon a demon to do his romantic bidding. It's about a girl. It's always about a girl. And he inadvertently summons the wrong demon, and he summons Lilith, and she has other ideas about what she wants to do now that she's been summoned. This book, you need to check the trigger warning, which is like right at the beginning of the book. The author very kindly listed all of the stuff, but this is absolutely savage. It is so violent, and like it's not just violent, but the violence is very creative, let's say that, on the part of the author. Really brutal violence mixed with quite fairly brutal blasphemy, because we're going back to we're sort of revisiting some Bible stories in Lilith's past, but they're being very heavily perverted, which is something I enjoyed. It's very weird, and I would say it's almost like, not in style but definitely in substance, it's kind of experimental. I don't really know how to go further into it. Just with the way that it uses like firmly established worldwide known stories from the Bible, like I really enjoyed a different take. Next up, Hilltop House by S.Q. McGrath. Now, S.Q. McGrath does not have enough readers. I raved about The Women in the Woods last video, and I stand by it, and this book, Hilltop House, was equally as good. Completely different type of story, totally different characters, different perspectives, but oh my gosh, so good, such a page turner. S.Q. McGrath is the real deal, guys. Like, if you're looking for a new author that has a body of work, like not just one novel out, but like you could read one, and if you love it, you can actually go back through their back catalogue. Like, she's amazing. She's the caliber of her writing is so high. Like, she belongs with the people who are in mainstream horror publishing, in my opinion. Her turn of phrase, her use of language, her story construction, her viewpoints, I especially like. I think I've read 4 or 5 of her books now in this last month, and they have been consistently really high quality with the writing and editing and the formatting and everything, like professionally put together stories. and they're so well plotted, which is really funny because I saw a reel that she put up the other day saying that she gets so far into a book and then starts going, oh, I don't know how to tie this together. You would never know that from her endings. You would never know that she's like pantsing it a bit. Do you know what I mean? Like they read like she had like this solid plan for the whole book. So oh, what's Hilltop House about, I hear you ask? It's such a good idea. Cora and her mum move to a new house and the people in the town say the house is haunted, and we switch perspectives between Cora, her mum, and the house itself, and I love that so much. The house that's taken a liking to Cora, a weird obsessive possessive liking, and the house can do stuff. The house may or may not have done a murder before, and it's, you know, it's neurotic. In a really weird way. It's like, this isn't a comedy, by the way, and it's not like I'm not laughing because the book is funny. It's just what I found funny was very dark. I guess that's my sense of humor. So this isn't a comedy horror by any means, but there are just little, like, the house is getting like more and more neurotic, like Crichton from Red Dwarf once they bring Kachanski in, if you've seen that. So like Crichton's an android, but he's getting a bit more human as the seasons go on. But then when Kachanski comes in, he's really jealous of her with her relationship with Lister, and he starts to just get loopy with it, and that's what the house is like. It gets progressively anxious, and like the house's anxiety shows up in the form of like cracks start forming in the walls, and I just thought that was such a great metaphor for human anxiety about how it affects you physiologically. As you can see, I think I probably lit up a bit talking about the story. I really, really, really loved it. I loved this story so much that before I even got to the rest of her books, I went on Amazon and I just ordered physical copies of all of them, because I know, like, I knew I was going to love them, and I did, but that's for later in the video. Next up, another novel by Daniel Gindelsberger called The Demon's Secret. This is about badass priests and exorcisms and stuff. It wasn't really my cup of tea, which I'm sad to say. I actually feel like I would have loved to have been this book's editor. There's nothing wrong with like the spelling, grammar, formatting, stuff like that. And it might well have had an editor, like a line editor. Content wise, I really liked like the idea, but just not so much like the execution in the writing style. There were a few things where I thought, oh, you could have like really pulled on that to like connect us more to the characters. So like for an example, there's like a bit where these parents say their little kid is possessed, and it's like they open the door carefully, and there's nothing wrong with that sentence, but that was like the general writing style was like sentences like that, where I would have loved instead of like that one sentence, like a few lines, like as they approached, the priest noticed that both the parents started hanging back. Maybe when he opened the door, he like did it at an angle in case he was anticipating something being thrown, or you know, something like that, you know, like just like really giving us the picture of like what's going on there rather than just like the actions. But yeah, that was a fun story, and if you like, you know, kick-ass priests, that might be one for you. The Travelling City by Adrienne Miller is a novel now. I effed up with this one because I didn't need to read it. It actually wasn't a review request. It's a fantasy romance story that's nothing to do with horror whatsoever, and it was in my inbox because I won it, so it wasn't a review request at all, and I did not need to add it to my review list, but I'm glad I read it. It was enjoyable. If you enjoy fantasy romance, I'm not going to talk about it more here because it's not horror and it was an accident, but you know, yeah, The Travelling City, lovely cover also. Okay, oh my gosh, we made it to the last two. So these last two are by S.Q. McGrath as well. So we have Dark Heart, which is about 15-year-old Crystal, and she makes an unlikely friend in a guy called Jeremiah in her class when she gets her first period, and he helps her out and saves her from like a really embarrassing public thing about her period. And they become quite close, and then something happens. We're in dual timelines with this one, so like past and present. That is one of my absolute favourite storytelling devices. That and shifting perspectives, which this book employs both of those. It's a really good story. I got like It vibes because of like the past and present thing, and like this group comes back, and I really enjoyed it. And it starts to get progressively dark the further you go in, and I start to get very worried towards the end, and I'm not going to tell you if that was warranted. You just have to read it, and I really think you should read it. And then lastly, also by S.Q. McGrath, Kitty. So, a girls' slumber party. They play a seemingly innocent game, or is it? Or is it? The next day, one of the girls is missing, and then over 20 years later, the group reassembles. So it does have some similar things to Dark Heart, like the past and present thing, and the people coming back together in the adult years, but it's like an entirely different type of story. This one leans more a little bit into like YA, I would say. It's savage again. It's so the girls from the sleepover in the beginning are now adults with their own daughters, and there is a cycle of something happening, and it gave, again, it's kind of like It vibed in that regard. And also I was thinking of like Adam Millard's The October Boys, that kind of stuff. So it was a really, really enjoyable read. I gotta say, S.Q. McGrath I had never read before this month, and I am so glad that she sent me these books for review, because this is a new favourite author. Like, that's like the level we're talking. Like, I've read so much this month, and all of her books are so memorable to me. Like, I slowed down to read these and like take my time with them, even though I had no time. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed them. And yeah, like I said, bought a bunch of her stuff and really looking forward to the next thing she puts out. So hopefully I'll be able to convince her to do an author interview on the channel, and I'm really hoping that you guys will like check out her books, and or like check her out to see if there's anything that takes your interest from her catalogue. So those are my mini reviews. I really tried to keep this to like half an hour, and that's gone horribly wrong. How do I feel? Exhausted. I am absolutely exhausted. I'm working over the weekend because I did still work every day, but I worked like an hour or two less a day to accommodate my reading, knowing that I would make it up on the weekend. So I'll be working over the weekend now. I have a lot of stuff to do because I pushed everything else in my life by the wayside to get this reading challenge done. I just got so obsessed with it. Like, for that last week, I just thought, well, who knows? After all, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I read 63 books in a month? It did not make reading less enjoyable for me, which really surprised me, because I thought I'll get about halfway through this challenge and I'll think I am so sick of books, I can't read for a few weeks or months even. And that just didn't happen, especially because the vast majority of these books I enjoyed, and several of them I really enjoyed. Like, I absolutely loved them. So it was just so fun getting to like explore all these new authors. Something else I have learned is that there is an incredible amount of talent and skill in the indie horror community. There seems to be this weird prejudice against indie, like self-published works and things, where an assumption about the quality is made before people get into the books, and the majority of these books look like traditionally published works. They're formatted, they're edited, the cover design is beautiful, the actual quality of the story is worthy of, being housed in Waterstones. I've had a great time. Another thing I've learned is that I'm way more capable than I thought I was of achieving a seemingly impossible goal with just a bit better time management. Now, I'm not saying that getting less than half your usual amount of sleep is recommended, and I was very tired and grouchy this week. I haven't cooked a meal for 6 days, and I spent a full 3 days in the same pair of pajamas. It was obsessive. I'd say I got a little like hyper fixated or something, whatever the term is. But reminded of my uni days when I used to, you know, spend days and pull all-nighters writing essays, and I lived in Cardiff and I'd order a pizza at 2 o'clock in the morning to keep me going and stuff, and it gave me sort of like nostalgia for that, and it's really motivated me to like get my projects, my writing projects done, because if I can read 63 books in a month, and most of them were full-length novels and short story collections, like the average book length I was reading was between like 350, 450 pages. I don't even know how many pages I've read, but if I can do that in 30 days, I can certainly get a short story done in a week. I can certainly get the draft of my novel finished in a few months. So that's, I'm feeling like inspired, and like today I will be not doing much, but from Monday onwards, I'm going to start my new project, and I'm excited and I feel sort of like invigorated. And also today when I woke up and I looked at my Kindle and there were no books in my carousel, the feeling of like elation, like I felt like almost high. Not that I know what being high feels like, because I've had review requests hanging over my head for 2 years. I have never not had a review request pending since I started the website, and they built up on me. So that's another thing I've learned. I will not be letting them build up on me like that. If I have to, I will just close review requests for a few weeks until I've caught up, so that I never again have 63 just waiting. Would I do this again? No, no, I would not. I missed my husband. Oh, and how did I do it? So I spoke to a friend about this, and she said, I believe you because I know you wouldn't lie, but also it sounds like you're lying because that's an insane amount of books. So I did this by just doing nothing but reading. I gave up everything else in life. Like I said, I wasn't joking when I said I was getting hardly ever sleep. Like hardly any sleep. I was setting an alarm and getting up pretty early every day, or I was staying up all night and then setting an alarm to make sure I didn't sleep past 12 the next day. So there were several nights that I didn't go to bed until 8:30 in the morning, 9 in the morning. So that's, I wouldn't do it again because I don't think it's healthy. And I was only able to mentally do this time, and physically, I think, because I knew that the end date was the 31st of May. So it was a finite period of time. So I'm going to go and explain this outfit choice to my husband, and I will see you in a few days for my author of the month for May video, which obviously is late because I had to do this today. Also, I'm going to make a video ranking my top 10 books of this reading challenge, so I can actually talk about them in a little bit more detail. And then I've got a whole bunch of video ideas I'm really excited to do that I will actually have time to make because now I don't have review requests. I hope you've enjoyed watching me slowly lose my sanity through this reading challenge. Thanks for sticking with me, and if you know of any other cool reading challenges, let me know in the comments. I might not take one on right now this week, but yes, I'm looking forward to my next one, so please